The rain fell heavily on the fresh earth covering Madeline's casket. Lauren Chambers stood frozen, unable to move even as the other mourners began to disperse, black umbrellas creating a solemn procession away from the gravesite. She felt her best friend Julia's hand on her elbow, gently urging her to leave, but Lauren couldn't take her eyes off the temporary marker that would soon be replaced by a permanent headstone. Madeline Blackwell, 18 years. So many dreams. All ended on a dark, empty road 3 nights ago. "Lauren, we should go," Elliot whispered, suddenly appearing beside her. His face was composed, almost stoic, a stark contrast to her tear-streaked one. In 10 years of marriage, she had never quite understood what lay behind that mask of control, especially these past few years when something between them had shifted so subtly she'd barely noticed until it was too late. "Just 1 more minute," she managed to say, her voice breaking. She needed to say goodbye one last time, alone with her thoughts, with the daughter who had been her only bridge to a future that now seemed impossible to imagine. Elliot nodded curtly and stepped back, joining Julia under her umbrella. Lauren could feel his eyes on her back as she knelt and placed her hand on the wet soil. "I love you, Maddie," she whispered. "I'll always love you." The drive home was silent, punctuated only by the rhythmic sweep of windshield wipers and the occasional ping of Elliot's phone. Lauren leaned her forehead against the cold glass of the passenger window, watching raindrops race down the surface, blurring the world beyond. Elliot drove with the same calm precision he always did, his profile seemingly carved from stone. No muscle moved on his face. "We need to stop somewhere before heading home," he said suddenly, turning onto an unfamiliar street. "Where?" Lauren asked, trying to focus through the fog of grief that enveloped her. "The community center near the park. I want to check their hours." Lauren looked at him in confusion. "What for?" "I've arranged for donation pickup tomorrow, for Maddie's things. The sooner we clear out her room, the easier it will be to move forward." An icy grip seized Lauren's heart. "Maddie's things? But we just buried her today." "Exactly," he replied, not taking his eyes off the road. "That's why this is the perfect time. The longer we cling to the past, the harder it becomes to move forward. It's like removing a bandage. Better to do it quickly." Lauren stared at him, stunned. Was this the same man she had lived with for 10 years? Had she ever really known him at all? "I'm not ready," she whispered. "You never will be," he said, with a slight edge of impatience. "We can't turn our home into a shrine. It's not healthy." The remainder of the journey passed in silence. When they arrived home, Lauren went straight upstairs, unable to talk anymore. She took the sedative her doctor had prescribed and fell into a heavy, troubled sleep. Lauren woke to the sound of a voice. Elliot was speaking on the phone in the hallway. The clock showed 2:30 in the morning. "Everything's going according to plan," he said in a hushed tone. "Tomorrow we'll get rid of her things." "No, she doesn't suspect anything. Just do what we agreed." Lauren lay paralyzed. She didn't understand exactly what he was talking about. Elliot returned to the bedroom, and she pretended to be asleep. Something felt deeply wrong about those words, that tone, but her mind, exhausted from grief, refused to process it. In the morning, she awoke to the sounds of footsteps and boxes being dragged across the floor. Elliot entered the bedroom with a stack of them in his arms and placed them beside the bed. "Good morning," he said in a formal tone. "I've called the movers to come tomorrow. Today and tomorrow, we need to pack everything." He placed a sheet of paper on the bed. "Here's a list of what needs to be packed. I've marked what can be donated and what should be thrown away. Don't forget the closet and desk." Lauren took the list with trembling hands. Everything was there. Clothes, school books, bedding, photos on the walls. "Elliot, I can't," she said, her voice breaking. "It's only been 1 day. How can you be in such a hurry?" Elliot's face contracted. He raised his voice suddenly. "Enough clinging to the past. We need to move forward. Do you think this is easy for me? Do you think I'm not suffering too?" Something cold and strange flashed in his eyes. making Lauren instinctively recoil. He had never spoken to her in that tone before. Noticing her reaction, Elliot softened his expression and sat beside her, putting his arm around her shoulders. "I'm sorry. I'm hurting too. But this will help us. The sooner we remove the triggers, the easier it will be to heal. Trust me." Lauren had no energy to argue. Maybe he was right. Maybe this was just a masculine way of dealing with grief. After a breakfast she barely managed to swallow. The doorbell rang. Mrs. Lucille Baker, their neighbor from downstairs, stood at the door with a large cake in her hands. "Lauren, my dear," the older woman said, embracing her tightly. "Such pain, such terrible pain. I brought a cake. Stay strong, dear." Lauren led the neighbor to the kitchen and put the kettle on. Mrs. Baker offered words of comfort, but Lauren barely heard them. When she went to get the sugar, she overheard a muffled conversation coming from the living room. "And the insurance? Did they manage to resolve it before?" The sentence was cut off by Elliot, and silence followed. Lauren froze. Insurance? What insurance? But when she returned to the kitchen, the subject had changed. After the neighbor left, Elliot announced he was going to his office to handle bereavement leave paperwork. Alone at last, Lauren slowly climbed the stairs to her daughter's room. Maddie's room was bright and clear, with light blue walls and white furniture, a poster of her favorite band, photos with friends, a stack of books on the desk, everything just as if Maddie had stepped out for a moment and was about to return. Lauren sat on the bed and ran her hand over the comforter. How many times had they talked here about school, friends, the future? Maddie wanted to be a marine biologist and study dolphins. "Imagine, Mom, I'll get to swim with dolphins for work." Her voice seemed to still vibrate in the air. With a heavy sigh, Lauren opened the closet and began placing clothes in bags. Mechanically, each piece evoked a memory. The dress she wore to the 9th grade dance, the sweater they chose together last winter. Lauren pulled out the blue silk dress, Maddie's favorite. She bought it with her first paycheck from her summer internship. "Look, Mom, just like the actress in that series." She pressed the dress against her face, inhaling the lingering scent, a soft mixture of perfume and something indefinable but so familiar. Elliot entered without knocking. Seeing her with the dress, he frowned and approached quickly, snatching the garment from her hands. "This won't fit anyone anymore. Don't torture yourself." He tossed the dress into one of the donation bags and left without waiting for a response. Lauren stood motionless, staring at the door as it closed. Something was wrong, something she couldn't comprehend. Her eyes fell on Maddie's school backpack, lying beside the desk. She pulled it close and unzipped it. Inside were books, notebooks, a pencil case with colored pens, all so vibrant, so alive. She picked up the biology textbook, the most used, full of markings, that Maddie would excitedly show her mother each day, telling her what she had learned. Maddie loved that subject. As she leafed through the pages, Lauren found a folded sheet. It wasn't a bookmark, but a note folded several times. She carefully unfolded it and recognized her daughter's handwriting. Trembling, hurried. "Mom, if you're reading this, look urgently under my bed. You'll understand everything." Lauren's heart raced. She read the note 3 times. What did it mean? When had Maddie written this? What was she supposed to understand? Lauren looked at the door and knelt to peer under the bed. In the furthest corner, almost against the wall, she saw something dark, a box taped to the wooden bed frame. With effort, she stretched her arm and managed to pull it out. Her heart was pounding furiously. She opened the box carefully. Inside, she found a small black folder that she recognized as Maddie's. It was filled with documents, printed emails, copies of messages, bank statements, printed photos, and a USB drive. It was a complete dossier. Maddie had gathered evidence that something wasn't right with Elliot, that her death might not have been an accident. Lauren felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. She heard footsteps in the hallway and quickly hid the folder in the closet. behind a pile of clothes, pretending she was just organizing the room. Later, when she had a moment alone in the bathroom, Lauren retrieved the hidden folder and took it with her. She looked around the bathroom and, behind the ventilation cover, found a small space where she could store the folder without it being discovered. She carefully placed everything there and reattached the grill. She was terrified, but now knew she couldn't trust anyone, not even Elliot. She needed to make copies, needed to protect the evidence. At dinner time, Lauren went downstairs with a carefully composed expression, a mixture of grief and fatigue, beneath which she could hide her fear. Elliot was already waiting at the table. He had ordered food from her favorite restaurant, pasta with seafood. "Come on, Lauren," he said, pouring wine into glasses. "We need to keep our strength up." Lauren sat across from him, feeling like an actress in a deadly play. Every gesture, every word could betray her. "Thank you," she said, picking up her fork. "You're right. We need to eat." Elliot watched her with a slight smile. Once that smile had seemed welcoming to her. Now she saw something predatory in it. "I spoke with the school principal," he commented, drinking his wine. "They're collecting money to make a plaque in Maddie's honor for the biology lab." Lauren felt a lump in her throat, fighting back tears. She loved biology. She dreamed of being a marine biologist, studying dolphins. "It's a fitting tribute. I thought she would like it. I made a significant donation in our name. I thought it was the right thing to do." But Lauren looked at her husband carefully. Where was all this money coming from? In the documents she'd found, there were references to serious debts, unless Maddie's life insurance had already been paid out. "Very generous of you," she said, trying to keep her voice neutral, "especially considering our financial situation." Elliot froze for a second, then shrugged. Business has improved, and there are more important things than money. He raised his glass, as if toasting his daughter's memory and their future. Lauren raised hers as well, but at that moment noticed a subtle movement from his hand. Had he turned for an instant and put something in her wine? Or was it just paranoia? "To her memory," she said, lightly touching her glass to his, but without drinking. Elliot stared at her, waiting for her to take a sip. Lauren merely touched the glass to her lips. "I'm so tired today. I think I'll go to bed early." "Drink the wine," he insisted. "It will help you relax. I chose your favorite." "Thank you, but alcohol makes my headache worse. I'll take something milder." She rose from the table, feeling the muscles in her back tighten under his gaze. Without looking back, she went upstairs, closed the door, and leaned against it, trembling. She was almost certain he had put something in the wine, a sedative or something more dangerous. In the bathroom, she closed the door and retrieved the folder with the documents hidden in the duct. She needed to make copies, hide them in several places. If something happened to her, this had to reach the police. She took out her cell phone and began photographing everything: documents, pages of notes, message exchanges. Then she uploaded the files to the cloud and sent copies to her work email. She created a new account, sent the files there too, and wrote down the access data on a piece of paper that she hid in her makeup bag. Finishing everything, she heard footsteps. Elliot was coming up the stairs. Quickly, she put the folder away and turned on the shower to pretend she was bathing. The bedroom door opened. Lauren turned off the water, grabbed a towel, and came out. Elliot was sitting on the edge of the bed, holding a glass of water and 2 pills. "I brought your medicine," he said. "You forgot it downstairs." Lauren froze. She had never mentioned which medicine she would take, only said that she preferred not to drink. "Oh, thank you," she replied, taking the glass and the pills. "How thoughtful of you." Elliot continued watching, waiting for her to swallow them. Lauren brought the pills to her mouth, pretended to swallow, and drank the water. In reality, she held them between her gum and cheek, a trick she had learned in childhood to avoid taking bitter medicines. "There," she nodded. "Now lie down. You need to rest. Tomorrow will be a busy day. The movers arrive early. We need to oversee everything." He leaned over and kissed her on the forehead. Lauren restrained the impulse to pull away. His lips were cold. "I'll be right back," he said. "Just going to take care of some things downstairs." When he left, Lauren spit the pills into a tissue. They were small and white. They weren't the capsules she usually took. What could they be? She put the pills in her robe pocket for later investigation. She lay down and covered herself up to her chin, pretending to be asleep. Elliot returned and stood beside her for a long time. Then, carefully, he checked her pulse at her neck. Satisfied, he undressed and lay down beside her. Lauren remained motionless, breathing deeply and steadily. Through half-closed eyes, she watched Elliot take his phone, write a message, set an alarm, and turn off the light. The night seemed endless. She was afraid to move. What if he was still awake? When his breathing became deep and steady, Lauren carefully turned over. It was 3 in the morning. If he had a plan, it wouldn't be tonight. Perhaps he just wanted her to sleep deeply while he searched the house. What if he had already found the folder? The idea made her stiffen. Was he just waiting for the right moment to act? Elliot suddenly moved, and she froze, but he only turned to his side and continued sleeping. She sighed silently. It was time to act. Tomorrow, she needed to go to the police, show them the documents. But would they believe her? Or would they think it was the delusion of a devastated mother? No, those papers weren't enough. She needed something more solid. She needed to make Elliot incriminate himself, record his confession, make him talk. A plan began to form in her mind. Risky, dangerous, but there was no other way out. When the movers arrived, she would have the chance to escape from the house. She needed to find someone she could trust. But who? Julia was too emotional, could ruin everything. Then she thought of Nathan Reed, an old family friend. He worked as a private investigator. They hadn't spoken in years, but they had been very close in the past. He would help. He had to help. The decision was made. Tomorrow, she would look for him. The morning began with a phone call. Lauren awoke to the muffled sound of Elliot's voice coming from the kitchen. Still in bed, she listened as he spoke. "Everything's going according to plan. Tomorrow we'll get rid of everything. No, she doesn't suspect a thing. Just do as we discussed." His words chilled her spine. What was he talking about? What did they want to get rid of? Was it really just about Maddie's belongings? Or something more sinister? She rose slowly, her mind still clouded by grief and tension. The first thing she did was go to the bathroom and check if the folder with Maddie's documents was still in the ventilation duct. Yes, still there. She sighed with relief. After that, she returned to the bedroom and dressed in silence. She descended the stairs as if she were a slow-motion version of herself. Elliot was in the kitchen having coffee and typing on his laptop. "Good morning," he said with a forced smile. "How did you sleep?" "Well, I think I passed out from exhaustion," Lauren replied, stepping into her role as a drugged woman. "Those pills were strong. What medication was that?" "Just a common sedative," he answered casually. "But you were so exhausted, it must have hit harder." Lauren faked a smile and poured herself some coffee, hiding her trembling hands. "What time are the movers coming?" "At 11. We still have about 2 hours to finish packing what's left." She nodded, trying to think quickly. She needed to get out of the house. She needed to talk to someone. "You know, I was thinking about visiting Julia today. She called yesterday while you were talking to the lawyer. She's very upset, too." A lie. Julia had work commitments right after Maddie's funeral, but Elliot often confused dates, relatives, and details of her life. It was a risky gamble, but possible. "Julia?" Elliot frowned. "You said she interrupted her work commitments and only came for the funeral." Lauren froze inside but tried to hide it. "Oh, yes. I meant I'm going to call her and see if she has some time and take advantage of going out to stop by the office. They asked me to sign some documents for the ongoing project." Elliot looked at her intently. "Want me to go with you?" "No need," she hurried to say. "You have to be here to receive the movers. I'll manage on my own. It'll be quick." He took several seconds to respond. "All right, but take a taxi both ways. No driving in your state. and let me know when you arrive." She agreed, relieved. She ran upstairs to the bedroom, changed clothes, and grabbed her purse. She left the folder with the documents hidden in the bathroom. It would be too risky to take it now, but the copies were on her phone. That was enough for what she needed to do. As she came downstairs, Elliot was waiting at the door. "I've already ordered a taxi. Should be here in 5 minutes," he said. "I'll track the route through the app. I want to make sure you arrive safely." She froze. He was going to track her. This would ruin everything. She quickly thought of an exit. "Oh, but I'd already called one." "Cancel yours. Mine is already on the way." "It's fine," he replied firmly, with that tone that brooked no argument. She realized she had no choice. She would have to improvise later. "All right, thank you for taking care of me," she said, forcing a smile. The car arrived. Lauren got in with her heart racing. On the way, she told the driver, "Sir, I need to change the destination. Take me to the Riverfront Cafe, on the boardwalk. It's urgent." As the car continued, she took out her phone and sent a message. "Nathan, I need to talk to you urgently. Matter of life and death. I'll be at the Riverfront Cafe in 20 minutes. The response didn't take long. "It's been a long time. I heard about your loss and I'm very sorry. I'll be there." "What happened?" "I'll explain in person. It's about Maddie's death." Lauren arrived before him. She chose a table in a corner with a direct view of the entrance. Her heart was pounding so loudly in her chest, it felt like it was trying to escape. 10 minutes later, Nathan arrived. He looked older, with some strands of gray hair and lines on his face, but his gaze was the same, steady, attentive. "My condolences again, Lauren," he said, embracing her sincerely. "I wanted to come to the funeral, but I was traveling." She nodded with teary eyes. "Thank you for coming now. I needed you so much." They sat down. Nathan ordered a coffee, and then looked at her seriously. "What's happening? You look scared." Lauren took a deep breath and said in a whisper, "Maddie didn't die in an accident. It was Elliot. He planned everything to collect the insurance. And now, I'm next." Nathan stared at her without blinking. His face revealed the gravity of the situation, but also a skeptical look, the look of an experienced professional. "Do you have proof of this?" Lauren took out her phone and showed him the folder with the photos. Maddie discovered everything. She left this hidden under her bed, a complete dossier. Here are conversations between Elliot and a mechanic talking about solving the stepdaughter problem. Here are the insurance documents. Here are statements of his debts, and these photos are of his mistress. Nathan looked through the images, his expression becoming increasingly serious. "When did you discover this?" "Yesterday, after the funeral. She left a note inside her biology book. She knew I would go through her things." She stopped, her voice breaking. "He wants to get everything out of the house. He's already called the movers. He wants to get rid of any trace of her." Nathan drummed his fingers on the table thoughtfully. "This material is strong, but it's circumstantial. You can't accuse someone based just on this. We need something more concrete." Lauren leaned across the table, looking him in the eye. "Then find it. Check Maddie's car. Investigate the mechanic. Find out who this woman in the photos is. Do something before he kills me too." She pulled the pills from her bag. "Just yesterday he gave me these. I mentioned I was going to take something for my headache, and he appeared with this. He never did that before. I pretended to swallow them." Nathan covered her hand with his and took the pills. "I'll help you, but we need to be very careful. If he is what he seems to be, he can be dangerous and unpredictable." He took a deep breath and looked around before continuing. "Maddie's car has already been destroyed, and the police filed the case as an accident. But with this material, I can try to request a new forensic examination. In the meantime, you need security. Don't go back home." Lauren shook her head. "I have to go back. If I don't, he'll know. He tracked the taxi. He'll know I went somewhere else, and the original documents are still there in the hiding place." Nathan frowned. "It's very risky. Can I send someone with you? Someone undercover?" "No," she said, almost in a shout. No police at the house. He'll deny everything. He'll call me crazy. These documents are my only protection." Nathan sighed. "Then let's do this. I'll give you a small, discreet microphone. It will record all your conversations with him. If we're lucky, he'll incriminate himself with his own words." He took a tiny device the size of a button from his pocket. "You can attach it to your clothes or keep it in your pocket. The battery lasts a whole day. Everything he says will be sent directly to my server." Lauren took the microphone and discreetly hid it in her blouse pocket. "What if I need to talk to you?" Nathan wrote a number on a piece of paper and handed it to her. "Send me a message every 3 hours. If you disappear, I'll come in full force. Take care, Lauren. And above all, don't provoke him. Pretend you don't know anything. As soon as I have the results from the pills, we'll act officially." She nodded. At least now she wasn't alone anymore. "I need to go. The movers should be arriving. If I delay, he'll get suspicious." Nathan accompanied her to the door of the cafe. "I'm watching over you. Call me for anything. And remember, your life is more important than any evidence." Lauren got into the taxi and gave the driver the address of the office where she worked. She needed to maintain the appearance of normality. If Elliot was indeed tracking the route, he would see that she wasn't lying about work. On the way, she opened her phone. 3 missed calls from Elliot. She didn't return any of them. Let him think she was busy in a meeting. As she approached the house, she saw the moving truck parked in front. The movers had already begun taking boxes and furniture from Maddie's room. Her heart ached. It was like watching the traces of her daughter disappear, as if she had never existed. Elliot was on the sidewalk, supervising everything. When he spotted her, he walked towards her with firm steps. "Where were you?" he asked. "I called several times." "Sorry, I had a long meeting," Lauren said, trying to appear calm. "Then I had to stop by the finance department to sign the leave papers." Elliot looked at her as if searching for a lie in her eyes. Lauren held his gaze, practicing the serenity she had rehearsed in the taxi. "I was worried. I thought you might be feeling unwell." "I'm fine. Just had a lot pending." She entered the house without looking at the movers. She went upstairs, took off her jacket, and tried to catch her breath. Elliot followed her to the top of the stairs. "I've already packed almost everything. Just a few small things left in the closet and the dresser." Lauren nodded without being able to respond. How could he be so cold? How could he methodically destroy every trace of the girl they had raised since she was 8 years old? "I'll finish," she said. "I need to say goodbye." Elliot hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "All right, I'll be downstairs coordinating the loading." As soon as he left, Lauren went straight to the bathroom. She needed to get the folder with the original documents hidden in the ventilation duct. She turned on the faucet to disguise any noise and carefully removed the ventilation cover. The space was empty. The folder was no longer there. A cold feeling took over her body. He had discovered it. Elliot had found the hiding place and taken everything. When? How? She was certain he hadn't entered the bathroom after her, unless he had been spying on her steps all along from the beginning. With trembling hands, Lauren replaced the cover and left the bathroom. That's when she stopped, frozen. Elliot was standing at the bedroom door. "Looking for something?" he asked, his voice too smooth to sound natural. "No, I was just washing up," Lauren replied, trying to sound convincing, but her heart was beating so hard she could barely think. Elliot slowly entered the room. "How strange. I thought you were messing with the bathroom ventilation." He knew. He had known all along. He was playing with her like a cat toys with a mouse. "No," she insisted. "I just noticed yesterday that the grill was a bit loose. I wanted to see if it had gotten worse." Elliot smiled, but it was an empty smile, like someone who had already decided the other's fate. "Ah, of course, the grill. That's not what you were looking for?" He pulled a USB drive from his pocket, the same one Lauren had seen in Maddie's box. Her stomach turned. "Where's the folder?" she asked, knowing there was no longer any point in pretending. "In a safe place," he responded, along with the other documents. Elliot took a step closer. "You know, Maddie was too smart for her own good, and now you're following the same path. He took another step. Lauren instinctively backed away. "Who did you meet with today?" he asked. "Don't tell me you went to work. I called there. They said you only appeared briefly and left through the back door." Lauren backed up until she hit the wall. She was cornered. "I met a friend. I needed to vent." "Lies? You lie poorly, Lauren. Do you think I don't notice? That I didn't notice how you've changed since the funeral?" Another step. Lauren felt the air getting thinner. "You found Maddie's folder, read the documents, and now you're trying to bring me down." She didn't respond, looking towards the window. "You killed her?" she said firmly. "You killed our daughter for money." Elliot raised his eyebrows and laughed with disdain. "She was never my daughter. She was a spoiled brat, always sticking her nose where it didn't belong." He spoke calmly, as if reporting the results of a game. "And an obstacle needs to be removed." Lauren stared at him, horrified. She no longer recognized the man she had lived with for 10 years. An obstacle to what? To a new life, he replied with simplicity. "I'm tired, Lauren. Tired of this marriage, this house, this role of dedicated husband. I needed money. Maddie's insurance was the first step." Lauren could barely breathe. "And me?" she asked with a faltering voice. "Am I an obstacle too? Of course, you would be next. In 6 months, when everything cooled down, a tragic accident. A grief-stricken widower receives the insurance and starts over." Lauren felt nauseous, but maintained control. She knew the microphone hidden in her blouse was recording every word. "There's still time to fix this," Elliot said, almost tenderly. "Tell me who you met with today. Who saw the documents?" She remained silent. If she spoke, she would put Nathan at risk. Elliot wouldn't leave any witnesses. "Going to stay quiet?" He sighed. "Then I'll have to find out another way." He took his phone from his pocket and opened the tracking app. "Let's see where you went after the office." "Ah, the Riverfront Cafe." He swiped something on the screen. "Let's take a look at their security camera." Before he could finish the sentence, Lauren lunged at him, trying to snatch the phone from his hand, but Elliot grabbed her wrist easily. His face contorted into a sinister smile. "Don't be foolish. It won't change anything." From downstairs, one of the movers called out, "Mr. Chambers, we've finished with the furniture. What should we do with the boxes in the living room?" He didn't release Lauren's arm. "I'll be right there," he shouted, then looked at her. "We'll continue this conversation in a minute." Suddenly he twisted her arm behind her back, covered her mouth with his other hand, and pushed her towards the closet. He pulled a roll of duct tape from the shelf. "Sorry about this, but you leave me no choice." Lauren tried to resist, but he was stronger. He quickly bound her wrists with tape and secured her arms to her waist. Then he covered her mouth with a thick strip. He did it carefully, like someone wrapping a package with experience. "Stay quiet while I finish downstairs. Then we'll continue our conversation about your new friend." He locked the bedroom door from the outside. Lauren sat on the bed, bound and gagged, her heart racing. But there was still hope. The microphone. She still had it, attached to her blouse. Nathan would be listening to everything. The question was how long it would take him to arrive, and what Elliot would do to her before that. Lauren looked around the bedroom desperately. She needed to free herself and find a way to cut the tape. On the bedside table was a glass vase. If she broke it, perhaps she could use a shard to cut the tape. She stood with effort and approached the table. With her bound hands, she pushed the vase from behind. The object fell onto a pillow on the carpet and didn't break. She let out a muffled groan of despair. She needed another idea. She looked at the mirror on the vanity. If she could break it. But how? She was tied up, with no strength in her arms. It was then that she saw her cell phone, which Elliot had forgotten on the dresser. If only she could send a message. She dragged herself over. With effort, she picked up the device with her hands bound behind her back. Now she needed to unlock the screen. She knew there was a fingerprint sensor on the back. She tried several times with her thumb. Finally, the screen lit up. She managed to open the messaging app, found Nathan's contact, and tried to type with the tips of her fingers in the most improvised way possible. "Help house, tied up." It was all she could write before hearing the key turning in the lock. Quickly, she left the phone on the dresser and ran back to the bed, sitting in the same place. The door opened. Elliot entered the room carrying a black case. He looked at Lauren with a calm, almost clinical air. "The movers have gone," he said, placing the case on the dresser. "Now we can talk more calmly." He approached the bed and examined Lauren's wrists, bound by the duct tape. "Tried to get loose, huh?" Intelligent, but useless. He looked around and saw the glass vase fallen on the carpet. "Good thing it didn't break," he murmured, carefully replacing it on the bedside table. "You're still thinking you can escape, Lauren?" Lauren stared at him, eyes wide. The tape over her mouth prevented any response. Elliot returned to the dresser, opened the case, and revealed the contents. Syringes, ampules, vials with clear liquid, cotton swabs, adhesive bandages, medical instruments. Lauren's stomach churned. "What are you going to do?" she tried to ask with her eyes, but her voice wouldn't come out. Elliot took a syringe, opened an ampule, and began filling it with a clear liquid. "First, calm you down. You're too tense. We need to talk properly." "Not like this." He approached with the syringe in hand. Lauren moved away, backing against the headboard of the bed. "I won't hurt you," he said, with that sweet, fake tone. "I just want to know who you met with. Who saw the documents? Where are the copies?" Lauren shook her head forcefully. She tried to say, "Nobody," to beg. "Last chance, Lauren," Elliot said, his voice beginning to lose patience. "Who was with you at the cafe?" She continued in silence. She knew that if she revealed Nathan's name, he would be in danger too. "Very well," Elliot murmured. "Then we'll do it my way." He held her shoulder and brought the needle closer. Lauren squirmed, trying to get away. Suddenly, the intercom rang. Elliot paused mid-motion, stretched his neck, trying to hear. "Expecting someone?" he asked, squeezing her shoulder hard. Lauren shook her head, denying it. The insistent sound of the intercom rang again, now accompanied by knocks at the door. "Probably a neighbor," Elliot said suspiciously. "Or the mailman." He looked at Lauren again. Her gaze was too restless. Something was wrong. "Stay here. I'll be right back." He placed the syringe on the dresser and left, locking the door from the outside once more. Lauren was left breathless, needing to act. This was her chance. She dragged herself to the dresser, found the cell phone. The previous message was open, incomplete. Quickly she wrote, "In the bedroom, second floor. Need help. He has syringes." And sent it. She heard voices coming from the front door. One of them sounded familiar. She went back near the bed and looked around, searching for something to free herself. She saw the table lamp with its pointed metal base, crawled to it, turned her back, and began rubbing her bound wrists against the edge of the base. The process was slow, painful, but the tape was starting to give. Sweat trickled down her forehead. The sound of voices grew more intense. There seemed to be an argument. Doors slamming. Elliot was coming back. The tape gave way. Lauren freed one of her hands. She quickly tore off the rest with her teeth, threw the remains under the bed, and looked for something to defend herself with. Nothing very useful, except the lamp itself. She unplugged the cord, held the base firmly, and positioned herself behind the door. She heard the key turning. The doorknob moved. Elliot entered. "So, where were we?" He didn't have time to finish the sentence. Lauren hit him with all her strength on the side of his head. He staggered but didn't fall. He groaned, turned, and grabbed her arm. "You ungrateful!" A physical struggle ensued. He was stronger. He pushed her against the wall. Lauren lost her breath for a second. Elliot advanced with his bloodied face. "Now it's going to be worse. I wanted it to be quick, but now..." He grabbed the syringe again. Lauren backed up to the limit of the room, pressing against the window. "Tell me who it is. Who did you talk to?" She answered in a hoarse voice. "The police. I sent everything. They already know." "Lies!" shouted Elliot, squeezing her neck. "You're too afraid of the police. You wouldn't send anything." Black spots began to invade Lauren's vision. She used her last strength to land a kick between his legs. He screamed and loosened his grip. She ran towards the door, but he caught her and pulled her by the hair. "You won't leave here alive." He raised his arm to hit her, but was interrupted by a shout. "Police! Hands up, Elliot!" At the door stood Nathan with a gun pointed at him. "What? What is this?" asked Elliot, surprised. "Who are you?" "Detective Nathan Reed. You're under arrest on suspicion of murder and attempted homicide." Elliot laughed derisively. "This is absurd. Her daughter died in an accident. And here we just had a husband and wife disagreement. A disagreement with duct tape, syringes, and threats. It's all recorded." Nathan pointed to the microphone attached to Lauren's blouse pocket. "We transmitted everything in real time." "That's illegal," Elliot protested. "Recording someone without consent, in case of risk to life, it is legal," retorted Nathan firmly. "And we also have the pills you gave her yesterday. Dangerous combination of sedatives and tranquilizers in dangerous doses." Nathan took a step forward. "And your mechanic? He's already giving a statement, telling how you paid to sabotage Maddie's car brakes." Elliot's face distorted with rage. "He's lying. There's no proof." "Yes, there is," continued Nathan. "Bank transfers, phone recordings, and the documents your stepdaughter gathered. By the way, where's the folder?" Elliot remained silent, his eyes fixed. Lauren observed it all, still unable to believe the psychological torture was nearing its end. "It doesn't matter," said Nathan. "We already have a search warrant. We'll find it." "Turn around," he ordered. Elliot turned slowly, but in a quick movement, tried to lunge at Nathan. "Don't do it!" shouted Nathan, dodging in time. Elliot ran to the open window. In an agile leap, he jumped onto the roof of the house's annex. "Lauren, are you okay?" Nathan ran to her. She was still shaking, but managed to say, "Yes, but he's going to escape." "Don't worry, I'll go after him. Close the door and wait for backup. They're coming." Nathan ran down the stairs. Lauren went to the window and saw Elliot running across the backyard. Right behind, Nathan pursued him with his gun in hand. Elliot jumped the fence and disappeared into the street. Nathan leaped after him. Lauren locked the window and hugged herself. Her whole body was trembling. Everything had happened so fast. Minutes before, she was about to die. Now her aggressor was fleeing, but exposed. And worse, desperate. And a desperate person is capable of anything. The memory of the folder returned like a punch to Lauren's stomach. Elliot had said he had hidden everything in a safe place. But where? Still inside the house or in the car? She needed to act. She needed to find the documents before he returned. Or worse, destroyed them. She thought quickly. If he was planning to kill her that day, with everything already prepared, he probably had the plan ready, including the material to simulate a suicide. It must be in the car. She ran downstairs. The house was strangely silent, as if holding its breath. Through the back door, she went to the garage. Elliot's car was still there. Maybe he had fled on foot, precisely to make identification difficult. The driver's door was unlocked. Elliot had always been too confident to lock the car inside the garage. Lauren got in and started searching. Glove compartment, door compartments, under the seats, nothing. She opened the trunk and then froze. There was the black folder, the same one she had found under Maddie's bed. Beside it, a gasoline can, a coiled rope, and a small toolbox. Everything was ready. He was going to simulate that she had killed herself at the same place where Maddie had died. With gasoline, a fake letter, a staged fall. Lauren's stomach turned. She took the folder and checked its contents. Almost everything was there. The original documents, the papers Maddie had printed, the photos, the statements, except for the USB drive she had already seen in Elliot's hands when it all began. She closed the trunk and quickly returned to the house, her heart still racing. In the street, sirens began to sound. Police cars arrived, parking in front of the house. Officers exited armed, wearing bulletproof vests, surrounding the area. Lauren went out to the porch with the folder in her hands. One of the officers approached. Mrs. Lauren Chambers? Yes, she replied, still breathless. Is everything okay? Where is Detective Reed? He's pursuing your husband. He fled through the back towards the side street. The officer spoke into his radio. Attention! Suspect on foot, fleeing through the back street. Teams, position yourselves. More squad cars sped off in the indicated direction. Let's go inside, said the kind officer. You need to sit down and recover. Lauren nodded, entered the house with him, where other officers were already beginning to take photos, collect evidence, isolate areas. She sat on the sofa, not knowing whether to cry, scream, or sleep. She handed the folder to one of the agents and answered the questions one by one. Yes, my husband tried to kill me. Yes, he admitted to killing my daughter. Here are the documents she gathered herself, and here are the recordings from the hidden microphone. Time seemed to dissolve. People came and went. There were camera flashes, radio sounds, the smell of rubber and metal. Lauren was an island of silence amid the chaos, until the front door opened again. Nathan entered. His jacket was rumpled, his face sweaty, and there was a scratch on his cheek. But his eyes were shining with determination. We got him, he said. Lauren looked at him in shock. He resisted. He tried, but there was no way out. We cornered him near the river. I think he wanted to run to the bridge, maybe stage another tragedy. She instinctively winced, but Nathan continued. We didn't let him. He was caught in the act. We found a USB drive on him too. Now he's at the police station. Tomorrow is the first official interrogation. Nathan sat beside her and carefully held her hand. It's over, Lauren. He won't hurt anyone anymore. Lauren shook her head, tears streaming from her eyes. It's not over. Maddie's dead. My girl, my baby won't come back. Nathan didn't try to respond with empty phrases. He just hugged her. She collapsed and cried out everything she hadn't been able to until then. She cried for Maddie, for the betrayal, for the fear, for the wasted time, for the love squandered on a man who turned out to be a monster. When the crying finally subsided, she raised her face. I want to see him. I want to look him in the eyes. Ask why. Why didn't he just leave? Why did he have to kill? You'll have that chance, Nathan replied, but now you need to rest. You can stay at my house or at one of my colleagues, but you shouldn't spend another night here. Lauren looked around. The house where she had lived for 15 years, where Maddie had grown up, where she had built every detail with love. Now everything seemed dirty, hostile. I'll pack my things and never come back here. Sheets. Lauren went up to the bedroom one last time, like someone visiting a grave. There, in every corner, was the memory of her daughter. Maddie's scent still lingered in the air, light, like an echo of her presence. She opened the closet door and began separating what was hers. She didn't want any of it, nothing that had been shared with Elliot. She would only keep what was exclusively hers and what genuinely reminded her of Maddie. She took a small wooden box from the dresser drawer. Inside were notes, childhood drawings, the little hospital bracelet from the maternity ward. She carefully placed them in a cloth bag. These were the only things she wanted to take. Downstairs, the police were still circulating. An officer informed her, "Ma'am, we found documents hidden in secret compartments in the house and also in the car. There's additional evidence of transactions made by Elliot, along with recordings with the mistress. Everything is being collected for the investigation." Lauren thanked him with a nod. She no longer had any words. Nathan waited in the living room, now with a more serene expression. "Are you ready? Just one more minute." She came down with the small bag on her shoulders. It was all that remained of an entire life. As she walked out the door, she looked at the house one last time. The garden was still wet from the previous day's rain. Her daughter's furniture had disappeared. The pictures, the photos, the books. Everything that told Maddie's story was now stored in cold boxes at the police station. Or, as she preferred to think, in safekeeping. Because now it would have a purpose. Justice. Nathan led her to the car and opened the door for her. "You'll be okay," he said. "I don't know if I will, but I have to try." The journey to his house was silent. Lauren leaned against the window and watched the city pass by as if she no longer belonged anywhere. When they arrived, Nathan showed her to the guest room. It was simple, welcoming. She thanked him with a look. He respected the silence. "If you need anything, I'm in the next room. The police will be watching the house, just as a precaution." Lauren nodded, took off her shoes, lay down on the bed, and despite her exhaustion, couldn't sleep. The scenes returned one by one, like mental knives. Maddie's whisper, "Mom, if you're reading this." Elliot's look as he held the syringe, the fear of dying without being able to tell the truth, the heartache of knowing her daughter already knew and tried to warn her. Finally, she took her cell phone and opened the photo gallery. There were the images of the documents, the messages, the evidence, and among them, an old photo of Maddie at the city aquarium, with a dolphin in the background. She was smiling with the light of those who have a whole world of dreams ahead of them. Lauren cried silently, but it was a different cry. It wasn't just pain, it was also strength. Now Maddie would have a voice, now she would be heard, and the man who tried to erase everything she was would face the consequences. The next morning, Lauren was awakened by the sound of Nathan's house intercom. Still drowsy, she heard footsteps outside the room, and then a gentle knock on the door. "Lauren," called Nathan, "the police are here. They want you to go to the station to identify the documents and monitor the beginning of the interrogation." She got up, changed clothes, and went downstairs. On the way to the police station, the nervousness began to grow. She didn't know what to feel. Fear, anger, dread. She knew she would have to look at him, the man who had slept beside her for 10 years and who had coldly killed her daughter and tried to kill her. Upon arrival, she was greeted by a kind detective who already had all the documents arranged on a table. She recognized them one by one, confirmed the annotations, the signatures, the printed emails. Everything was real, everything Maddie had discovered. "We're going to start the interrogation," said the detective. "Want to watch from behind the glass?" Lauren nodded and was taken to the observation room where she could see, through the one-way mirror, the interrogation room. Elliot was seated, handcuffed, but calm. He wore a simple t-shirt. He looked like he hadn't slept much. When Nathan entered the room, Elliot raised his eyes and gave a slight smile. "Come to give me a moral lecture," he mocked. "I've come to hear your version before justice gives its own," Nathan replied. "I've already seen that you're determined to paint me as a monster. But you'll see it's not so simple." Nathan didn't respond, turned on the recorder. "Elliot, we have your recorded confession. We have the mechanic's testimony. We have the bank transfers, the messages exchanged with your mistress, and we have the evidence gathered by your stepdaughter before she died. She was too curious, like her mother," Elliot replied with a shrug. "She did everything on her own. I just corrected the course of things." Lauren, on the other side of the glass, felt her heart tighten. The coldness with which he spoke about her daughter was unbearable. "You premeditated the accident," Nathan continued. "You paid to have the car's brakes sabotaged. You waited for her to be alone. And now we have proof that you tried to do the same to your wife." "I didn't try anything. She became hysterical, made things up. I was just trying to calm her down. I was protecting her from herself. Protecting her by putting sedatives in her wine? You tied her up, threatened her with a syringe." Elliot remained silent for a while. Then he stared at Nathan with cold eyes. "You don't understand. She ruined everything. I had a plan, a fresh start. I didn't want that life anymore. Not them, not either one of them." Nathan turned off the recorder. "That's enough." He left the room, met Lauren in the corridor, pale but steady. He doesn't feel anything, Nathan. "Nothing. I know," he responded gently. "But now it's up to justice. He'll answer for everything, and the evidence you protected will ensure that." Hours later, sitting in front of the prosecutor, Lauren signed the papers that moved forward with the criminal case. The detective assured her that given the amount of evidence and the confession, Elliot would remain in preventive detention until the trial. As she left the police station, she felt the weight of the sun on her skin. It was late afternoon. An orange sky formed on the horizon, and for the first time in days, she took a deep breath, without fear. Lauren spent the following days at Nathan's house. She didn't sleep much, but gradually she regained control over her own life. The following week, the press began to report the case. The reaction was immediate. Widow exposes murder plot orchestrated by husband. Insurance company helps unravel fraud attempt, followed by attempted femicide. 18-year-old left evidence before dying and helped prevent new crime. Maddie's name spread through social networks as a symbol of courage and intelligence. The school where she studied held a small, intimate ceremony in her honor. They placed a tree in the garden with a discreet plaque, "In memory of Madeline Blackwell, curiosity, courage, and light." Lauren went there with Nathan. She stood for a long time in silence, her hand on the trunk, still fragile from the newly planted sapling. Then she looked at Nathan. "I think I can start breathing again now." "You don't have to do this alone," he replied. Lauren finally let her face open into a small smile. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was a promise of hope. In the following months, she moved to another neighborhood, starting over far from the house where she had lived with Elliot. She found a new job at an independent publishing house and began studying psychology at night, something she had always wanted but never had the courage to try. Nathan continued following the case. Elliot was indicted for first-degree murder, attempted murder, false imprisonment, and forgery. The trial was set for a few months later, but the lawyers already knew. With all the evidence, the outcome was inevitable. One Saturday afternoon, Lauren visited Maddie's grave with a notebook in her hands. She sat on the grass beside it, opened to the first page, and began to write. "Daughter, today I missed seeing you dance around the house or hearing you talk about dolphins in the oceans and dreams. You saved my life, even though you left so early. I promise to honor your courage and live with the same brightness that was in your eyes. I love you forever, Mom." She closed the notebook, left a flower on the headstone, and stood up. The sky was clear, a light breeze blowing through the trees. It was as if, for a brief moment, the world had become silently gentle again. Lauren walked towards the cemetery gate, step by step, day after day, as Nathan had said. The pain would never disappear, but neither would life. 3 months later, the trial date arrived. Lauren sat in the courtroom, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Nathan sat beside her, a steady presence that had become increasingly important in her life. On the other side of the aisle sat Diane Weston, Elliot's former mistress, looking tense and afraid. She had agreed to testify against him in exchange for immunity from prosecution as an accessory. The courtroom filled with murmurs as Elliot was led in, wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed in front of him. He scanned the room, his eyes eventually meeting Lauren's. She held his gaze steadily, refusing to look away. Something flickered across his face. Not remorse, but perhaps surprise at her strength. "All rise for the Honorable Judge William Harrington," the bailiff announced, and the proceedings began. The prosecutor, District Attorney Monica Torres, presented a devastating case. One by one, the evidence that Maddie had collected was presented to the jury. Bank statements showing Elliot's massive gambling debts, insurance policies taken out on both Maddie and Lauren with unusually high payouts, recorded conversations with the mechanic who had sabotaged Maddie's brakes, emails between Elliot and Diane discussing their future plans. The defendant didn't just commit murder, Torres told the jury in her opening statement. He betrayed the most sacred trust we have, the duty to protect our family. Instead, he saw his stepdaughter and wife as obstacles to be removed, as nothing more than dollar signs. Elliot's defense attorney tried to paint Maddie's death as an unfortunate accident and suggested that Lauren was suffering from delusions brought on by grief. But When the recording from the hidden microphone was played, Elliot's cold voice saying, "She was never my daughter. She was a spoiled brat, always sticking her nose where it didn't belong." Several jurors visibly recoiled. When it was Lauren's turn to testify, she walked to the stand with quiet dignity. As she was sworn in, she placed her hand on the Bible and looked directly at the 12 men and women who would decide Elliot's fate. "Mrs. Chambers," the prosecutor began, "can you tell the court about your relationship with your daughter Madeline?" Lauren took a deep breath. "Maddie was my whole world. After her father died when she was 8, it was just the two of us for several years. She was brilliant, straight A student, passionate about marine biology. She volunteered at the local aquarium every weekend. She was going to start college in the fall with a scholarship. And how was her relationship with the defendant, your husband?" Lauren glanced at Elliot before answering. "I thought it was good. Elliot seemed supportive of her goals. He attended her school events, helped her with college applications. I believed he loved her like his own daughter." Her voice caught. "I was wrong." For over an hour, Lauren testified about finding the note in Maddie's biology book, discovering the hidden evidence, and the terrifying final confrontation with Elliot. Through it all, she remained composed, her voice only breaking when describing the moment she realized her daughter had known she was in danger, but had tried to protect her mother instead of herself. During cross-examination, Elliot's lawyer tried to suggest that Lauren had fabricated the evidence out of grief and jealousy over his affair with Diane. "Isn't it true, Mrs. Chambers, that you were aware of your husband's relationship with Ms. Weston for some time and were planning to divorce him?" "No," Lauren replied firmly. "I had no idea about the affair until I found Maddie's evidence, and if I had known, I would have divorced him immediately, not invented a murder plot. Yet, you immediately believed your daughter's accusations without questioning them? Without considering that an 18-year-old might misinterpret adult situations?" Lauren's eyes flashed. "My daughter was meticulous and honest. She wouldn't make accusations without proof, and I didn't just believe, I verified. Everything she documented was true. Every bank statement, every conversation, every plan. She knew Elliot was planning to kill her, and instead of running away, she left a trail of breadcrumbs to protect me." She looked directly at Elliot. "Her last act was to save my life." When Diane Weston took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. The attractive woman looked nothing like the confident seductress Lauren had imagined. Instead, she appeared haunted, fidgeting constantly with her hands. "Ms. Weston, what was the nature of your relationship with the defendant?" the prosecutor asked. "We were involved romantically for about 2 years, she said, avoiding Elliot's gaze. "Did the defendant ever discuss his financial situation with you?" Diane nodded. "He told me he had investment troubles, that he needed money to start over. At first, he talked about divorce, but then he started saying it would be easier if Lauren wasn't in the picture at all." "Did he specifically mention harming Mrs. Chambers or her daughter?" Diane's hands trembled. "Not at first. He would joke about accidental deaths and insurance payouts. I thought it was just dark humor. Then, after Madeline died, he said, 'One down, one to go.' That's when I realized he was serious." "And what did you do with this information?" "Nothing," she whispered, tears forming. "I was too afraid of him, and too afraid of being implicated. I'll never forgive myself for that." The defense tried to portray Diane as the mastermind, suggesting she had manipulated Elliot into considering murder for financial gain. But the evidence simply didn't support it, particularly when the mechanic testified that Elliot had paid him $10,000 to tamper with Maddie's brakes. On the final day of the trial, Elliot himself took the stand. He had been coached well, appearing remorseful and confused. He claimed memory lapses, suggesting stress and gambling addiction had affected his thinking. He admitted to the affair, but denied planning anyone's death. When confronted with the recordings of his own voice, he claimed he had been playing along with what he thought was Lauren's delusion to calm her down. "I loved my family," he insisted, looking at the jury with practiced sincerity. "I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but I never wanted to hurt them." During closing arguments, the defense painted Elliot as a flawed man who had made poor choices but wasn't a killer. The prosecution reminded the jury of the overwhelming evidence and Elliot's own recorded words. "The defendant told us exactly who he is," Torres concluded. "A man who saw his family not as people to love, but as obstacles to remove. His stepdaughter knew it. His wife discovered it. And now you know it too." The jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning with their verdict. As the foreman stood, Lauren reached for Nathan's hand. "On the count of first-degree murder of Madeline Elizabeth Blackwell, we find the defendant, Elliot James Chambers, guilty." Lauren closed her eyes as relief washed over her. "On the count of attempted murder of Lauren Chambers, we find the defendant, guilty." One by one, guilty verdicts were read for every charge. Elliot showed no emotion, his face a mask until the very end. 2 weeks later, at the sentencing hearing, Judge Harrington addressed Elliot directly before pronouncing sentence. "Mr. Chambers, you committed the most profound betrayal possible. You destroyed a young life full of promise and attempted to take another. You've shown no genuine remorse, only regret at being caught." The judge paused, looking down at Elliot over his glasses. "I hereby sentence you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole." As Elliot was led away, he finally looked at Lauren with naked hatred in his eyes. She met his gaze without flinching. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for a statement. Lauren stepped to the microphones, Nathan at her side. "Today doesn't bring my daughter back," she said, her voice clear and strong. "Nothing ever will. But it does mean her final act, gathering the evidence that exposed her killer, was not in vain. Maddie was brave and brilliant to the very end." She took a deep breath. "I ask for privacy now, as I continue to rebuild my life and honor my daughter's memory." As they walked to the car, Nathan gently touched her elbow. "You did it, Lauren. You got justice for Maddie." She shook her head slightly. "Maddie got justice for herself, and for me. I just followed the path she left." She looked up at the clear blue sky. I wish she hadn't had to be so brave." That evening, Lauren sat in her new apartment, surrounded by the few mementos of Maddie she had saved. Photos, her favorite books, the small dolphin figurine she had loved since childhood. On the wall hung a newly framed acceptance letter from Boston University's marine biology program, where Lauren had established a scholarship in Maddie's name. It had been 6 months since the funeral, and while the pain remained, it had evolved into something she could carry without being crushed by its weight. Her phone rang. It was Julia. "I saw the news. How are you holding up?" "I'm okay," Lauren replied, and realized with some surprise that it was partly true. "It's over. He can't hurt anyone else. You should be proud of yourself. You fought when most people would have broken." "I had help," Lauren said, thinking of Nathan, who had become more than just a friend in the months since Maddie's death. His quiet strength had been a foundation when everything else crumbled. And I had Maddie. Even gone, she was still protecting me. After hanging up, Lauren opened her journal, a habit she had started during therapy. Each day, she wrote a letter to Maddie, sharing her thoughts, her healing process, her small victories. Today's entry was shorter than usual. "Justice came today. I hope you can rest easier now. I'm trying to live as you would have wanted. Bravely, honestly, fully. I miss you every minute. But I'm learning to carry you with me in a way that helps me move forward, rather than staying frozen in grief. You would have changed the world, Maddie. In your memory, I still will." She closed the journal and walked to the window. The city lights twinkled below, life continuing its relentless forward motion. For months, Lauren had felt disconnected from that flow, as if she were standing still while the world rushed past. Tonight, For the first time, she felt ready to rejoin it. Her phone pinged with a message from Nathan. "Remember, dinner tomorrow at 7. The psychology department head is excited to meet you." Lauren smiled. Her application to the master's program had been accepted, the first step toward her new goal of becoming a grief counselor for families affected by violent crime. It wasn't the future she had planned, but it was a future with purpose, one that honored what she and Maddie had endured. "I'll be there," she texted back. Then, after a moment's hesitation, she added, "Thank you for everything." The reply came quickly. "Always." Lauren pressed the phone to her heart. In the midst of the worst darkness, she had found unexpected light, not just from Nathan, but from within herself. She was stronger than she had ever known, wiser in painful ways, but also more compassionate. The monster who had shared her bed for 10 years had tried to destroy her, but in the end, he had failed. Maddie's love, her courage, her final gift of truth had ensured that. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new steps forward on this unexpected path. But tonight, under the vast expanse of stars that Maddie had loved to name, Lauren felt something she had thought lost forever: peace. 6 years later, Lauren stood at the podium of Boston University's Marine Biology Department, adjusting the microphone as she prepared to address the crowd gathered for the inaugural Madeline Blackwell Memorial Symposium. The audience was a mix of distinguished scientists, eager students, and supporters of the foundation she had established in her daughter's name. At 45, the same age she had been when she lost Maddie, Lauren had grown into her new role with a quiet grace that commanded respect. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice steady and warm. "6 years ago, I stood in a cemetery wondering how I would take another breath, let alone build something meaningful out of such devastating loss. Yet here we are, celebrating the 5th recipient of the Madeline Blackwell Scholarship and the groundbreaking research our foundation has funded in ocean conservation." From her seat in the front row, a young woman with bright eyes and determined expression watched intently. Zoe Martinez, the current scholarship holder, had just returned from a research expedition studying the impact of climate change on dolphin populations, the very work Maddie had dreamed of doing. Behind Zoe sat Nathan, now Lauren's husband of 3 years, his face filled with quiet pride as he watched the woman who had somehow transformed unbearable tragedy into a force for positive change. "I often think about how my daughter approached life with insatiable curiosity, unwavering integrity, and the courage to stand for truth, even when it was dangerous to do so." The Madeline Blackwell Foundation isn't just about supporting marine biology. It's about embodying those values in everything we do. Lauren paused, looking down at her notes. The next part was always the hardest. Even after all these years, she felt Nathan's encouraging gaze and continued. "Many of you know the circumstances of Maddie's death, how her own investigation exposed the man who took her life, and how her foresight ultimately saved mine. What you might not know is how close I came to giving up in the aftermath. There were days when simply opening my eyes in the morning felt like an insurmountable task." In the third row, Julia wiped away a tear. Their friendship had deepened through the years, strengthened by the crucible of shared grief and healing. Beside her sat Dr. Hannah Friedman, the therapist who had guided Lauren through the darkest days of her recovery and later became a colleague in Lauren's private practice counseling survivors of trauma. But Maddie left me more than just evidence. She left me a choice: to surrender to despair or to honor her life by truly living mine. Every time I counsel someone who believes they can't go on after tragedy, I think of that choice. And I remember something Maddie wrote in her journal, which I found months after her death. "Mom always says, courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being terrified and taking the next step anyway." Lauren took a moment to look at the large photo of Maddie displayed on the stage. Not the somber portrait from the funeral, but one taken at the aquarium where she had volunteered, her face alight with joy as she reached out to touch a dolphin. In the years since we established this foundation, we've funded 37 research projects across 15 countries. The Blackwell Ocean Monitoring Initiative has created the largest database of dolphin population movements in the Western Hemisphere. And today, I'm honored to announce our newest endeavor, the Madeline Blackwell Marine Education Center, which will open next spring on the coast of Maine, offering hands-on learning experiences to thousands of students each year. Applause rippled through the audience. Lauren smiled, remembering how Maddie had once described her dream of creating exactly such a center. "Mom, imagine kids from the city getting to touch a starfish for the first time," she had said with characteristic enthusiasm. It would change everything for them. As the symposium continued, scientists presented their research, all funded by the foundation. Dr. Carlos Mendez shared his breakthrough work on dolphin communication. Professor Lin discussed the successful rescue and rehabilitation program for injured marine mammals. Throughout the presentations, Lauren felt a bittersweet pride. This was Maddie's legacy, not just the circumstances of her death, but the ripples of positive change that continued to spread outward. At the reception afterward, Lauren found a quiet moment with Zoe Martinez. "Your research presentation was exceptional," she told the young woman. "Maddie would have been so excited about your findings on dolphin family structures." Zoe's eyes shone. "Mrs. Reed, I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. When I was growing up in foster care, marine biology seemed like an impossible dream. The Blackwell Scholarship changed everything for me." "Call me Lauren, please," she said, squeezing the young woman's hand. "And Maddie would have loved your journey." She believed science should be accessible to everyone, not just those born into privilege. Later that evening, Lauren and Nathan walked along the Charles River, the city lights reflecting on the water. The early September air carried just a hint of autumn, and Lauren pulled her light jacket closer. "You were magnificent today," Nathan said, his arm around her shoulders. "I don't know if you realize how many lives you've touched." Lauren leaned into him. "I was thinking about the day we met, not the original introduction at that fundraiser years ago, but that day at the cafe when I was terrified and desperate. Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" Nathan shook his head. "Never. I was just trying to keep you alive through the next 24 hours. I couldn't see past the danger." "That makes two of us," Lauren said softly. "I remember thinking I would never feel safe or happy again." They stopped at a bench overlooking the water, their special spot where they often came to talk or simply sit in comfortable silence. Nathan took her hand, running his thumb over the simple wedding band he had placed there 3 years earlier, after a courtship that had evolved gradually from friendship to something deeper. "I got a letter from the parole board today," Lauren said after a moment. Nathan tensed slightly. "Elliot?" She nodded. "His attorney has filed another appeal. It's his 3rd attempt. The board wanted me to know in advance of the hearing next month. Are you going to attend?" Lauren looked out across the water, considering. "I think I am. Not because I'm afraid they'll release him, the evidence is still overwhelming, but because I want him to see me, not as a victim, but as someone who has built something meaningful despite his best efforts to destroy me. I'll be right beside you," Nathan promised. "I know you will." She smiled up at him. "That's been the constant these past 6 years. You beside me, never pushing, never pulling back, just present." As they walked back toward their car, Lauren's phone rang. It was Carson Williams, the director of the victim advocacy organization where she volunteered. "Lauren, I'm sorry to call so late," he said when she answered. "We have a situation. A woman just lost her husband and son in a home invasion. She's in shock, not responding to the crisis counselors. She keeps asking for you specifically. Apparently, she read your book." Lauren had published After Maddie, A Journey Through Grief and Resilience 2 years earlier. The memoir had become an unexpected bestseller and launched her career as a speaker on trauma recovery. Of course, Lauren said without hesitation. Text me the address. I'll be there in 30 minutes. After hanging up, she looked apologetically at Nathan. It's the anniversary dinner. I'm so sorry. Hey, he said gently, touching her cheek. No apologies needed. This is who you are, and it's one of the reasons I love you. We'll celebrate tomorrow. Lauren kissed him gratefully. I won't be late. And Nathan? Thank you for understanding. Always, he replied, their private word that had become both promise and affirmation. As Lauren drove to the hospital, she reflected on how grief had reshaped her life in unexpected ways. The psychology degree she had pursued in the aftermath of Maddie's death had led to a calling she never anticipated, working with those in the first raw stages of loss, when the pain seemed unsurvivable. Her own experience had given her a map through that darkness, one she now shared with others who couldn't yet see a way forward. At the hospital, Lauren was led to a private waiting room where a woman sat motionless, staring at nothing. Sandra Davis, according to the social worker's whispered briefing, had come home from a late shift to find her family dead, victims of a robbery gone horribly wrong. Lauren entered quietly and sat beside her, not speaking at first, simply offering the comfort of presence. They told me you lost your daughter, Sandra finally said, her voice barely audible. How do you keep breathing? Because I don't know how. Lauren took the woman's cold hand between both of hers. One breath at a time, she said softly. Just for now. That's all you need to do. Breathe in. Breathe out. I'll sit here with you while you do that. They sat in silence for several minutes, just breathing together. Then Lauren began to speak, telling this stranger about Maddie, about the darkness that had nearly consumed her, about the painful, non-linear path of grief. I won't tell you it gets better quickly, because it doesn't, she said, honestly. But I can tell you that eventually you find moments, just brief moments at first, where the weight lifts slightly. You notice a sunset, or hear a song, and for a few seconds you're present in that moment instead of drowning in grief. Those moments gradually expand, not to replace what you've lost, but to create space around the loss. So it's not the only thing defining your existence. Hours later, as Lauren prepared to leave, having helped Sandra through the initial paperwork and decisions no one should ever have to make, the bereaved woman asked a final question. Do you still talk to her? Your daughter? Lauren nodded. Every day. Not out loud usually, but in my heart. I tell her about my day, about the work of the foundation, about the funny thing the neighbor's cat did. It's not the same as having her here, but it's a connection I'll never lose. It was nearly midnight when Lauren finally arrived home. The house was quiet except for the soft sound of classical music coming from Nathan's study. She found him there, reading, a cup of tea at his elbow. He looked up and smiled. How is she? He asked. Shattered, Lauren replied, sinking onto the couch beside his chair. But she has family coming tomorrow, and I've arranged for daily counseling. I'll check on her this weekend. Nathan nodded, setting aside his book. And how are you? It was the question he always asked, never assuming that her professional composure meant she wasn't affected by the pain she witnessed. It was one of the countless ways he showed his understanding of the complex person she had become. I'm okay, she said thoughtfully. Sad for her, of course. But also, I don't know if grateful is the right word, but you can help in a way few others can, he finished for her. Yes. She leaned her head back, closing her eyes briefly. On days like today, with the symposium and then this, I feel Maddie's presence so strongly, like she's just over my shoulder, watching. She would be incredibly proud of you, Nathan said, his voice certain. Of the foundation, your work with trauma survivors, the book, all of it. Lauren smiled, feeling the familiar mixture of sorrow and gratitude that now characterized her memories of Maddie. I had a thought today, watching Zoe present her research. Maddie didn't get to live her dreams, but because of her, dozens of young scientists are living theirs. There's something beautiful in that, isn't there? Something that Elliot couldn't destroy. There is, Nathan agreed. It's like she planted seeds before she left, and you've been tending them ever since. Now they're blooming everywhere." They sat together in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Lauren stood and held out her hand. "Come on, let's go to bed. Tomorrow's going to be busy." Later, lying in the darkness with Nathan's steady breathing beside her, Lauren thought about the journey of the past 6 years, from the devastation of loss to the painstaking rebuilding of a life with purpose, from the betrayal that had nearly destroyed her to the love that had helped heal her, from the desperate woman who had hidden evidence in a bathroom vent to the advocate who now helped others find their way through trauma. She thought of Elliot, still in prison, his appeals routinely denied. The monster had taken so much, but he hadn't taken everything. He hadn't taken her capacity to love, to help others, to find meaning. He hadn't taken Maddie's legacy. Lauren turned on her side, looking out the window at the stars, the same stars she and Maddie had once identified together using a little pocket guide to the constellations. Somewhere out there, she liked to imagine, Maddie was watching, perhaps swimming with her beloved dolphins in some cosmic ocean. "I'm okay, Maddie," she whispered. "We're both okay." And for the first time in a very long time, Lauren believed it was completely true. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Lauren woke early, her mind already running through the day's tasks. A therapy session with 2 clients, a meeting about the education center's curriculum, and dinner with Nathan to make up for their missed anniversary celebration. As she made coffee, she noticed a small wrapped package on the kitchen counter, with a note in Nathan's handwriting. "For our anniversary. 6 years since that day at the cafe. I'm eternally grateful you trusted me. Always, N." Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with 2 charms, a dolphin and a tiny book. Lauren smiled, touching the dolphin charm gently. It was exactly the kind of thoughtful gift Nathan specialized in, acknowledging both Maddie's memory and Lauren's own journey. She slipped it on her wrist just as her phone chimed with a text. It was from Zoe. "Dr. Weiland approved my expanded research proposal. Heading to the Gulf Stream next month. Thank you for believing in me." Lauren texted back her congratulations, then paused to look around her sun-filled kitchen. On the refrigerator hung a photo of Maddie at 16, laughing with her head thrown back. Beside it was a more recent picture of Lauren and Nathan at the Foundation's fundraising gala, and another of the entire staff of the counseling center where she now served as clinical director. This was her life now, not the one she had planned, but one rich with meaning, connection, and purpose. A life built from the ashes of tragedy, stone by painstaking stone. As she drove to work, Lauren thought about what she would say at the support group she facilitated that evening. People newly broken by loss always ask the same question. How did you survive this? How do I keep going when it hurts too much to breathe? The answer wasn't simple or easy, but it was true. You keep breathing anyway. You find one small reason to continue each day. You accept help when it's offered. You give yourself permission to feel the pain rather than running from it. And eventually, you begin to build something new, not a replacement for what was lost, but a tribute to it. A life that honors what came before by refusing to remain shattered. Stopped at a red light, Lauren glanced at the bracelet on her wrist, the silver dolphin catching the morning sun. "Love you, Maddie," she said quietly. "Today and always." The light turned green, and Lauren drove forward into the day, carrying with her both the weight of what had been lost and the precious gift of what remained, the capacity to transform pain into purpose, to help others find their way through darkness, and to live with an open heart despite knowing its vulnerability. She had survived the unsurvivable, and in doing so, had discovered that the most powerful response to devastating loss wasn't just endurance, but transformation. Not just surviving, but eventually, improbably, thriving. Carrying the beloved dead not as a burden, but as a light illuminating the path forward. Maddie's last message had indeed saved Lauren's life, not just in the literal sense of exposing Elliot's murderous plans, but in the deeper sense of showing her that even in the darkest circumstances, truth and love could prevail. That legacy continued to unfold, touching countless lives through the foundation, through Lauren's work with trauma survivors, and through the simple, profound example of a life rebuilt with purpose and meaning after unimaginable loss. As the morning sun streamed through the windshield, Lauren felt a rare moment of perfect peace. The journey from that rain-soaked grave to this sun-filled day had been long and often painful, but she had made it, and in doing so had ensured that Maddie's brief, bright life continued to matter, not just to one grieving mother, but to the world. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.